Hello and welcome to another episode of Fully Charged. I think this one has to be called the Tesla Road Trip Edition. I'm currently in Scotland. I've just driven up from Gloucestershire, which is about 300 miles behind me. I've had to stop twice on that sort of journey. Once to charge the batteries, absolutely essential. The other time was for my own personal reasons. I had to go to the loo. I had bladder anxiety. But I've decided, I've worked it out now, I've got the data. I get bladder anxiety kicks in about 150 miles before range anxiety kicks in. It's the first time I've driven the right-hand drive made for the UK Tesla Model S. I'm extremely lucky and privileged to have been given this car. I'm very grateful. I haven't been given it, I've been loaned it. Let's get that straight. I haven't bought it. I have discussed with my wife the possibility of cashing in some of my pension to buy a Tesla Model S. Hasn't been received with an enormous amount of enthusiasm just yet. But you know, I'll work on it. I've now got 161 miles of typical range left, and I have 51 miles of my journey to do. So the discussion of range anxiety just goes out of the window. It doesn't even register. Tomorrow, the reason I'm going up to Edinburgh, I'm not just going out for a jolly japes, although there are some jolly japes involved. I'm giving a speech tomorrow. I do this talk called "Electric Cars Are Rubbish, full stop, aren't they?" ? Which I've been doing for some time now, and so it's basically explaining what I've understood about electric vehicles and what they mean and what they represent and the doors they open in terms of the way we use energy and the way we move ourselves. When I drove up here, drove up to Edinburgh in January in the Nissan Leaf, I said in an interview that the next time I go to Edinburgh, I'll do it on a train, because it makes much more sense, which it really does. And you can read a book and have a snooze. And so now I'm just reiterating that. After this journey, the next time I come to Edinburgh, it'll be on a train. Earlier on this year, I did a little road trip with a really good friend of mine called Simon Hackett, who's Australian. He'll be the first Tesla Model S customer in Australia. I don't know, he may already have got his car. No, it's coming very soon. And we drove down, he was visiting here, and we drove down to Cornwall in the right-hand drive Model S. So I'm going to cut now to a car which is the other way around. This is a very special, it's a mini road trip, I think we can call this. Mini road trip for Fully Charged. This is my very good friend Simon Hackett, who's come from Australia, although he didn't drive here in a Tesla Model S. Will you be the first Model S owner in Australia?
Yes.
Will you? You'll actually be the first.
That's the intention, yes.
Yes! Yep. And also, there's two things I want to say. First Model S owner in Australia, and do you still hold the record for the longest on one charge in the Tesla Roadster?
In the Roadster, to the best of my knowledge, I do 501 Ks on a nominally 380k charge. People have gone further than that in Model S's, because these have got much bigger battery packs. So I'm very much looking forward to getting mine. Yes. If I want it done, we'll do better.
So, but wait a minute, you did 501k, which is in miles.
313. And it had about 10% left. I could have done 550 Ks.
Wow. And so now Simon's visiting the UK, and we've arranged to borrow this rather magnificent top of the range Tesla Model S, and we're driving down to Cornwall to visit the Eden Centre and a few other places on the way. Today we had an amazing experience. We did. We had lunch with an author some of you may have heard of called Sir Terry Pratchett. We went to his house, which was just a thrill, and he's awarded an honorary doctorate. Yes, an honorary doctorate, his 10th honorary doctorate in general, and his first one from Australia in particular. Right. From the University of South Australia, which is a university in my hometown of Adelaide in South Australia. So the Vice-Chancellor of the university, David Lloyd, came out along, and I happened to be able to come along for the process as well. And you were with us. Yeah, it was a real honour to be there. It was delightful. And Sir Terry was in extraordinarily fine form. Wasn't he? He was in brilliant form. And it's just everything was terribly appropriate, including the appropriate black hat with proper Australian corks. The corks all around it. Yeah, it was a classic moment. You know, it's important. It's an Australian degree. Yeah. So you know, it's very sweet standing there with the corks around his head. Yeah, the corks sort of flopping around his face. Yeah.
The Eden project in Cornwall is an extraordinary tourist attraction.
educational charity and research centre. It's just amazing. You've got to go. It has the biggest conservatory in the world, including a huge indoor rainforest. And in the rainforest, it's really hot. After leaving the Eden Project, we drove to Bath, where we stayed in a hotel and recharged the car overnight, before visiting Simon's pals, who work with some musician chap called Peter Gabriel, at the truly amazing Real World Studios. We weren't allowed to go in, they were actually recording an album. So, back to Edinburgh. Well, that was my trip to Edinburgh. It was amazing. I had an amazing time. The talk went really well. I had no opportunity to record it. At some point I will try and make a recording of it and I'll put it up on YouTube. The car was on display for 24 hours outside the assembly rooms. Thousands of people saw it, looked at it, asked questions. And the car has been extraordinary. So I've really got used to driving it now. And there's loads of things. I've got lots of opinions about this car. It's big. It's much too big for me. I don't need a car this big. It does feel like you're in this kind of very exclusive club of wealthy people that can have cars like this, and that makes me uncomfortable because I'm a guilt-ridden, middle-class, wishy-washy, lefty liberal, I suppose. But you know, I got over it because it is such a nice car to drive. And I knew when I was sitting in traffic jams I wasn't pumping out loads of toxic, noxious chemicals at the back of it. Now, the questions I get asked, I'm going to answer some of the questions I get asked. How much does it cost to use the rapid chargers? At the moment, they're free. So I drove up here 3 days ago, and it cost, I would reckon it'd cost me about £3 to charge the car overnight at home, because it is a very big battery. So I reckon it's £3. Maybe I'll go even further. I'll go £4. And then I drove it all the way up here, charged it on the way up, charged it overnight here, and I'm driving back today, charging it there. So by the time I get home, it will cost me £4. There is no charge at the moment for any of the charging facilities I use, but clearly that can't. That is unsustainable. It's an unsustainable economic model. And if I had to pay £10 to use the rapid charger, it would have cost me, say, £24 to drive from my home to Edinburgh and back. So to do a journey of 700 and something miles. Which I can't do the maths now, I need a calculator, but it would cost you hundreds to do it in a petrol car. So it's still enormously cheaper. It uses less energy. This is the really important point that is very difficult to get across. This car, even this car with its much bigger, powerful, big motor and its big battery pack, and it's a heavy, big car, it still uses less energy per mile than the most super efficient petrol engine, just because of the efficiency of the electric motor. So even in the kind of high-end luxury market like this, you're using so much less. And if you compare it to an equivalent vehicle, so an Audi A8, a BMW 5 Series, a big Mercedes, I don't know which one of those big Mercedes, it's astronomically cheaper to run with an astronomically smaller impact on our total energy network. Oh yeah, I'm alright there. It's
small size, yeah?
It's quite a big car.
Yeah, you need exactly in the left. After my colleague show you where.
Oh great, thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you. That is extraordinary. So I'm now in this very exclusive garage underneath a very posh hotel in London. I'm going to charge the car for nothing. Well, what I'm understanding so far is this. If you charge this car on a 13 amp, like an ordinary square pin socket like we have in the UK, a domestic socket that you can boil your kettle with, make your toast with, that one, it charges it at 5 miles an hour. So every hour it's plugged in, you add 5 miles to the range, which, if you think about it, is very slow. That is very, very slow. And that is the kind of idea that most people have about how long it takes to charge an electric car. If I charge it on my home 32 amp socket, so that is the same electricity that goes to your electric cooker. That's a 32 amp ring main in the house, and that's what charges my socket. So that's 32 amps at 240 volts. That charges it at about 30 miles an hour. still slow when you've got a 250-mile range. So it takes a few hours to charge it like that, or a few rather than days. If you charge it on an Ecotricity rapid charger, part of the electric highway, which is what I've been using up to now, that's charging at about 66 miles an hour. So for every hour you plug it in, you add 66 miles of range. And that is a 32 amp high voltage input, which is called 3-phase, and that's what's used in industrial premises to run things like big industrial machines like lathes and things like that. This supercharger is currently charging this car at 120 amps at 380 volts, and it's averaging a plus charge range of 136 miles an hour. It's gone up, it goes up to 121 amps. It did, I think it was 122 at one point. So that fluctuates all the time because the grid fluctuates. We didn't know. We didn't know that before we had electric cars. The grid isn't constantly at 240 volts and 13 amps like when you plug your thing in. You just think that's it because electricity stays the same. No, it's constantly... And there's really clever people who are adjusting knobs to make that happen. Big Bakelite knobs with numbers on, like in Doctor Who in 1963. No, a bit more sophisticated than that. Now, you could say, well, I could have filled a petrol tank in that time. Yes, you could, but you'd have to pay an enormous amount to fill that petrol tank. Here's the clue. This is free. Nothing. It doesn't cost a penny, and it never will if you own this car. That is just mind-boggling. It brings up so many different problems. I'm just going to use the term energy inequality. To add to income inequality. So people who can afford to buy this car and get free energy, free fuel for the life of the car, are in an incredibly privileged position. Just imagine that. Just imagine if electricity costs go up and petrol costs go up astronomically, and even people who've got lots of money who drive big cars start to go, God, this is using a lot of money to drive this damn big thing around. And they walk past one of these and they see that it costs nothing to charge it, to drive hundreds and hundreds and thousands of miles. Nothing, not a penny. That creates a lot of tension. And if there's people who haven't got a big house and haven't got solar panels and can't afford an electric car and have to live and have to buy their energy from the big six because they don't know that there's any difference, like Ecotricity and Good Energy, that are companies that aren't the big six, that are producing renewable energy, and we should know about it, and we need to tell more people about it because those companies are brilliant and they're changing the landscape. But most people don't know about them. Most people who don't watch things like Fully Charged don't know anything about them. Please tell all your mates that don't know anything about Fully Charged. You can switch to one of the small energy providers that are investing all their profits in renewable energy and maintaining their prices lower than the big six, and aren't tied to the big fossil fuel importers, and are very opposed to fracking and are very opposed to importing gas from Mr. Putin and petrol from King Faisal. It's important. These things are important. And 94% of the population haven't got a clue and never think about it. And why should they? But it's time, maybe for their own benefit and for the benefit of all of us, that they do think about it.